Let's talk about something huge, our deepest fear, the fear of death. But what if it isn't an enemy to be fought? What if it's actually a doorway to a more meaningful life? In this explainer, we're going to explore that very question through two powerful lenses, modern psychology and ancient Buddhist wisdom. We're going to see how this fundamental fear can be completely transformed.
Okay, to dive in, let's start with a really powerful image from the Lotus Sutra. It talks about our lives being inside a burning house. Now, this isn't just poetry. It's really a diagnosis of that constant, searing anxiety that just kind of hums beneath the surface of everything.
So, this burning house, it's really the fear of impermanence, and most of all, the fear of our own death. That one fear smolders at the root of so many of our actions. It's what drives us to cling to things, to compete, to build up this fragile sense of self. But here's the paradox. All that effort often just adds more fuel to the fire of our own suffering.
What's absolutely fascinating is how this ancient insight clicks so perfectly with modern science. Psychology has its own name for this burning house, and its own diagnosis for how we try to escape the heat.
Psychologists call it terror management theory, or TMT for short. The core idea is simple, but it's also incredibly profound. It's that we humans are smart enough to know that one day we will die, and that knowledge creates this deep, underlying terror that we're constantly trying to manage.
So how exactly do we manage it? Well, TMT research shows we develop all these psychological defenses. We cling really tightly to our cultural beliefs, our religion, our nationality, because it makes us feel like we're part of something that will outlive us. We work hard to boost our self-esteem to feel significant. But there's a real dark side. This anxiety can make us more hostile to outsiders who challenge our worldview, and it can even feel things like narcissism as a desperate attempt to feel permanent.
But the story doesn't just end with negativity. Psychologists also found a surprising upside. For some people, a reminder of death can be a powerful wake-up call. It can inspire them to be more compassionate, to strengthen their relationships, and to live a more meaningful life.
And this brings us to a really crucial distinction. You see, psychology gives us a useful map for managing what it sees as a permanent anxiety. It's all about coping. But Buddhism makes a far more radical claim that this fear isn't permanent at all. It can be completely uprooted.
So what is that root cause? According to the Buddhist Dharma, to understand our fear, we have to go deeper than just the symptoms. We need to diagnose the underlying disease.
And that root cause is summed up in the first noble truth. Life is characterized by dukkha, this deep sense of stress and dissatisfaction. And where does this stress come from? It comes from our desperate craving for things to be permanent in a world that is constantly changing. Our fear of death is the ultimate expression of this. We cling to our life, to our identity, refusing to accept that it, too, is impermanent.
So the Buddhist antidote, then, isn't to build better defenses against fear. It's to dissolve it through radical presence. The teaching advises us to stop projecting all these fearful scenarios into the future, and instead to simply and clearly see what is right here, right now.
To make this idea a bit clearer, Buddhism often uses these really powerful stories. And one of the most famous is a parable that shows how our greatest fear can actually become our greatest medicine.
It's the parable of the good physician, and it's a story that's designed to completely reframe our entire relationship with fear.
So the story goes like this. A doctor offers medicine to his sick children, but they just refuse to take it. So he uses what's called a skillful means. He leaves and sends word that he has died. This shock of grief and fear is the one thing that finally convinces them to take the medicine, and they're cured. And only then does the father reappear, alive and well.
The lesson here is so profound. The children's fear became the very catalyst for their healing. It shows that our deepest dread, when it's met with wisdom, isn't an obstacle to avoid. It can be the very doorway to our own awakening.
So this brings us to the ultimate antidote offered by the Dharma. We're talking about a vision that goes far beyond just managing or coping with fear. This is about total liberation from it. This whole solution begins by challenging our most basic assumption about life and death. The Japanese Buddhist teacher Nichiren wrote that in the ultimate reality, Myo represents death and Ho represents life. He argued they aren't two separate, opposing forces. So what does this mean? It means life and death are not in conflict. Think of them more like two sides of the same coin, just alternating phases in the continuous, single rhythm of reality itself. Death isn't the end of life. It's an integral part of its dance. And this leads to the final piece of the puzzle, the concept of Buddha nature. Buddhism teaches that we all have an inherent potential to awaken. And awakening means realizing that the fixed, separate self we're so afraid of losing was never really there to begin with. So if there's no permanent me to be destroyed, what is there left to fear?
So we'll end with a question to chew on. Psychology shows us the walls we build against death. But what if true freedom comes not from reinforcing those walls, but from realizing there was nothing to wall out in the first place? What if death isn't the enemy we must defeat, but the inseparable companion that gives life its very meaning?